There are moments in life when silence says more than words ever could. I learned that at 63, standing in a dimly lit funeral home wearing the black dress Charles always said made me look dignified. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and old wood polish, and over the soft hum of the organ, I heard my son's voice. "She can't stay in that house alone," Gregory whispered. "We'll talk to her after the service." Stephanie replied smoothly, "We'll mention the facility gently. She's too fragile to be by herself now." They spoke about me as if I were already gone, as if I couldn't hear, as if my presence had become a problem they needed to solve. My name is Elaine Whitmore. 2 weeks ago, I became a widow. 14 days since I watched the man I built my life with take his last breath. 14 days since I whispered that I'd be strong, that I'd carry on. But I never expected that promise would require me to protect myself from my own family. That morning, I'd stood in front of the mirror fastening the same pearl necklace Charles gave me for our 20th anniversary. My reflection looked older, thinner, but not defeated. My silver hair was pinned back in a neat twist, and though my brown eyes were tired, they still held some fire. The house, though, felt foreign without him. It was a craftsman home in Cedar Bend, Illinois, 40 years of memories pressed into the walls. Charles built the back porch. I planted rose bushes every spring. Gregory took his first steps in the hallway. It was more than a house. It was a life. Gregory and Stephanie arrived right on time, as if this were a business appointment. He looked polished in a charcoal suit. She wore a black dress that probably cost more than what Charles and I used to spend on groceries for a month. "Mom," Gregory said as he hugged me, "how are you holding up?" I managed a small smile. "I'm still standing." What I didn't say was this. I had just begun grieving my husband. But now, I feared I'd have to grieve my son too. The evening after the funeral, Gregory and Stephanie stayed for dinner. I hadn't planned on cooking, but my hands needed something to do, so I made Charles's favorite beef pot roast with carrots and potatoes, slow-cooked the way he liked it. The aroma filled the kitchen, bringing back memories I wasn't ready to unpack. We sat at the dining table, where Gregory once did his homework, where Charles and I had shared coffee, birthdays, Christmas dinners, and late-night talks. Now, that same table had an unfamiliar chill to it. Gregory carved the meat with practiced precision. "Mom, Stephanie and I have been talking," he began. I looked up, already sensing a shift in tone. His voice was calm but careful, too careful. "We're just a little worried about you," Stephanie said, her concern smooth and rehearsed. "This house is so big, and managing everything on your own, it's a lot." I set down my fork. "I've been managing just fine for 63 years. Gregory nodded, avoiding my eyes. "We know, Mom, but Dad handled a lot. The bills, the insurance, the upkeep. We just don't want you to get overwhelmed." Stephanie reached across the table and lightly touched my hand. "We've actually looked into a few assisted living places nearby. Very comfortable, safe, with gardens, activities, staff on site 24/7. You wouldn't be alone." Alone. That word sat heavy on my chest. I glanced around the room, the photos, the bookshelf, the handmade quilt on the armchair. Alone, yes, but surrounded by history, by love, by choices I'd made. Gregory leaned in. "There's a place just 20 minutes from us called Bright Horizons. We could take you there for a tour this weekend. You'd be close. We could visit every week." I studied their faces. Stephanie's bright, polished smile. Gregory's carefully neutral expression. Neither of them had asked me what I wanted. They assumed. Decided. "I'm not ready to give up my independence," I said gently. "Of course," Stephanie said quickly, "but it's worth considering. No more worrying about yard work, or groceries, or falling when no one's around. If something happens," Gregory added, "you'd have people there, and we'd always be just a short drive away." After they left that night, I sat alone in Charles's recliner, the house filled with shadows. Their visit wasn't about concern, it was about control. And something deep inside me, something I hadn't felt since Charles' past began to wake up. I wasn't ready to be managed. I was ready to fight back. 3 days later, I received a call from Charles's longtime attorney, Aaron Blake. His voice was as steady and professional as ever. "Elaine," he said, "your husband left instructions for a private meeting, just the two of us. He was very specific about that. We scheduled it for the following Tuesday, but his words clung to me like mist. Charles had managed all our finances. I'd trusted him completely. I never once asked for account balances or investment summaries. Now, my stomach knotted with questions I hadn't even known to ask. That night, I opened the drawer of Charles's old desk in the study. Inside was a manila envelope marked with my name. I hesitated, then lifted the flap. There was a letter, folded in thirds, written in Charles's careful handwriting. My dearest Elaine, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're standing in a house filled with memories but also decisions. I know Gregory. I love him, but I've also seen a change in him. And in Stephanie, they will try to guide you, but not for your benefit. They'll speak of safety and support, but what they want is control. They'll see you as a burden, and they'll see what we've built as theirs to inherit. But you are not a burden, Elaine. You are not weak, and you are not alone. Inside this envelope are documents that outline everything, every account, every asset, every plan I made for you. Use them wisely. And above all, remember this. You've run classrooms, raised a son, carried a marriage through thick and thin. You are capable of anything. With all my love. Charles. My hands shook as I finished the letter. My throat burned. But I wasn't crying. Not exactly. I was feeling something deeper, an old sense of purpose rising to the surface. I turned to the second envelope, a full summary of our estate. The house, fully paid off and appraised at $425,000, 2 Karshis reliable sedan, and a vintage 1966 Mustang convertible he'd restored quietly over the last 2 years, now worth nearly $60,000. And then, a bank account in my name only, with over $800,000 in liquid assets. I pressed my hand against the desk to steady myself. For decades, Charles and I had lived modestly. We clipped coupons, drove used cars, paid cash for everything. I thought we were simply comfortable, but Charles had been preparing me for this moment long before he fell ill, not just with money, with trust. Gregory and Stephanie didn't know any of this. They assumed I was broke and vulnerable. They were wrong, and I intended to keep it that way, at least for now. Tuesday morning, I arrived at Aaron Blake's office, a brick building on a quiet street in downtown Cedar Bend. It hadn't changed in 20 years. Same brass door handle, same narrow staircase leading to the second floor, same framed certificates on the wall. Aaron greeted me with a gentle smile. He was in his mid-50s now, hair grayer at the temples, but his presence was still calm and steady. "Elaine," he said, motioning to the leather chair across from his desk. "Charles left everything in perfect order, but he also left some insights I think you need to hear." He spread the papers in front of me: property deeds, insurance policies, investment summaries, and a final letter. This one was addressed not to me, but to Aaron. "Aaron, if Gregory contacts you after my death, it will be under the guise of concern, but his goal is control. He and Stephanie have shifted over the years. They no longer see Elaine as a person with agency, but as a financial problem to solve. She doesn't know her own strength yet, but I do. If they push for conservatorship, I trust you to protect her, to remind everyone that this woman was never fragile, and that she has more than enough means to stand on her own." "Charles." I sat in silence, letting the words settle. Then I looked up. "Aaron, has Gregory contacted you?" Aaron hesitated. "Yes. Yesterday afternoon. He asked quite directly about the possibility of placing you under financial conservatorship. The word hit me like a slap. He claimed you might not be emotionally stable enough to manage your affairs." Aaron continued gently. "Given your recent loss, your age." "I'm 63, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Not 83, and I've been managing households and budgets since before Gregory could tie his shoes." Aaron nodded. "I told him that it would require a court order, medical evaluation, and above all your consent, which, clearly, he does not have." I stared at the documents, my chest tight. This wasn't just overreach, this was betrayal. My own son wanted to take away my autonomy. He hadn't offered to help me manage. He'd tried to take the reins entirely. I stood, my decision firming with every breath. I want to take full control of everything Charles left me. Every asset, every account. I want my will updated, and I want it done quietly. Aaron looked me in the eye. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "I am." As I left the office, the wind had picked up. Leaves swirled down the sidewalk like whispers. A storm was coming, but not the kind that brought rain. No, this storm was mine, and I was ready to steer it. Saturday morning dawned with a bright Midwestern sun, warm, polite, and entirely misleading. I dressed with care. Navy cardigan, comfortable flats, and the gold cross necklace my mother gave me on my wedding day. The look of a modest widow, agreeable and manageable. Let them underestimate me. It would make what came next even more effective. Gregory and Stephanie arrived promptly at 10, right on cue. He wore pressed khakis and a tucked polo shirt. She floated in wearing a yellow sundress that screamed cheerful competence. She even brought a folder of brochures, glossy, colorful, neatly labeled tabs. "Ready, Mom?" Gregory asked, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. "As ready as one can be to tour their possible future," I replied with a smile. Stephanie chuckled. "You're going to love Bright Horizons. It's not what people think when they hear assisted living. It's more like a wellness resort." We drove in their spotless SUV. Stephanie chatted about the facility's amenities, gardens, activity rooms, visiting yoga instructors. Gregory chimed in about the medical staff, safety features, and how the facility was just 20 minutes from their home. I let them talk. I observed, listened, filed every word away. Bright Horizons was exactly what I expected. Clean, quiet, and staged like a retirement catalog. We were greeted by a polished woman named Rachel Howard, the marketing director. She shook my hand with practiced warmth. "We're so honored to have you visit, Mrs. Whitmore," she said, eyes scanning my posture, gait, and alertness, assessing me like I was already halfway to needing care. She led us on the tour. We walked past airy lobbies with gas fireplaces, into dining halls that smelled faintly of institutional meatloaf. A bingo game was underway. Residents hunched over laminated cards, hoping to win small baskets of lotion and hard candy. "We offer 3 levels of care," Rachel explained. "Independent living, assisted living, and memory care. The transition is seamless if needs change." "How much is the monthly fee?" I asked casually. Gregory cleared his throat. "It's not bad, right, Rachel?" Rachel nodded smoothly. "Base fee is $3,800. Additional services can bring it to $5,500, depending on the level of care." "And how long do residents usually stay?" Rachel paused. "Most are here for the long term. We require proof of 2 years financial coverage before admission." I turned to Gregory. "So nearly $100,000 up front." He fumbled for a response. The final stop was a staged apartment, small, neat, forgettable. Stephanie beamed. "Look at the view of the gardens, Mom." I looked out the window. Tulips lined a winding path. It was beautiful and caged. "How often can residents travel?" I asked. "Say, extended trips?" Rachel hesitated. "Short trips, of course. Longer ones." "Well, you'd still be charged monthly to hold your unit." I smiled. "That's good to know." Because I had no intention of living here. But I wanted them to believe I just might. The following evening, I invited Gregory and Stephanie over for dinner. I served chicken casserole, Charles's mother's recipe, and set the table with our old wedding china. The house smelled warm, familiar. It looked like I was leaning into tradition. They arrived with hopeful energy, probably expecting compliance. Stephanie brought a folder filled with more brochures. Gregory had that eager but guarded look, like a man waiting for a deal to close. "This looks amazing, Mom," Stephanie said, taking a seat. "It smells just like my childhood," Gregory added. We ate quietly for a while. Then I set down my fork and spoke. "I've been thinking," I said. "Now that your father's gone, I have some freedom to make changes. I'm considering travel, maybe even some volunteer work overseas." Gregory paused mid-bite. "Travel? As in, international?" "Yes, your father and I always talked about it, helping where help is needed most." Stephanie smiled tight and forced. "That's adventurous." "You're not 25 anymore, Mom," Gregory said cautiously. "Travel like that isn't just expensive, it can be risky. What if something happens, and you're alone?" "I could get sick here too," I said gently. "That's life." "Well, sure," he said, trying to stay calm. "But here you have us. Familiar doctors. Support." I nodded thoughtfully. "You both make good points. Maybe I'll start smaller travel within the US, volunteer locally. But I'll need to sell the house first. Too much space for one person." Another look passed between them, silent and unmistakable. "Actually, we were going to bring that up," Stephanie said, her tone a little too casual. "The housing market isn't great. You might consider renting the house instead. Gregory and I can manage it for you, find tenants, collect rent, handle maintenance." I smiled. "That's very generous of you, but I wouldn't want to burden you." "It's not a burden," Gregory said quickly. "We're family." That word again. After dinner, I excused myself and returned with a folder, the same one Aaron had prepared. I placed it on the table and opened it slowly, revealing documents that glinted under the dining room light. "What's this?" Gregory asked, frowning. My financial picture, I said. Figured we should all be on the same page. I watched his eyes widen as he skimmed the figures. The bank statements, the property appraisals, the investment summaries, the insurance policies. His mouth opened, closed. This says you have nearly $2 million, he whispered. Yes, I said calmly. Charles left me well, quietly. He believed in living modestly, but he planned generously. Stephanie's hand went to her mouth. Gregory looked pale. You let us think, he began, then trailed off. I didn't let you think anything, I said. You assumed, you planned, you tried to manage my life without once asking me what I wanted. Gregory stood abruptly, pacing. So this was some kind of test? You played along to catch us? I observed, I said. I needed to understand what kind of relationship we truly have. His voice trembled. That's not fair. It's more than fair, I replied. You saw me as a burden, as a problem to be solved, not as a woman who still has her own dreams, her own strength. He looked at me, the fight draining from his eyes. What happens now? I met his gaze. Now, you decide what kind of son you want to be, and I decide what kind of mother I'm willing to continue being. The silence that followed was heavier than grief. But this time, it was mine to own. After they left, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I wasn't angry, not exactly. What I felt was clarity, a rare and powerful thing. Charles had known. He had prepared me for this exact moment. I typed, International Volunteer Opportunities for Seniors, into the search bar. Within minutes, I had dozens of tabs open. Habitat for Humanity was building homes in South America. The Peace Corps had programs for retired professionals. Doctors Without Borders needed logistics support in East Africa. I bookmarked every one. The next morning, I submitted my first application, then another, and another. I updated my passport, scheduled a physical, and began preparing the house not to leave it behind, but to leave it with dignity. A week later, I received an offer to join a Habitat build team in Costa Rica. 3 months. Moderate physical labor. Living conditions described as simple but clean. It sounded perfect. That same afternoon, I received a text from Stephanie. We've been thinking about the assisted living tour. Maybe we moved too fast. Can we talk? I replied politely. There's nothing to talk about at the moment. Later that evening, my phone rang. Gregory. Mom, we're worried about you, he said. We just want what's best. You had your chance to show that, I replied gently. And what you showed me was that you were worried about managing Menno supporting me. There was a long pause. Then his voice dropped. Quieter, more honest. Stephanie's pregnant. He blinked. I see. We're going to need help, he said. Financially, emotionally, everything's just changing. For a brief moment, I felt that familiar Tuga mother's instinct to step in, to soften the blow, to give. But I reminded myself of something Charles had written. You are not a burden. And you are not a backup plan. Asterisk. I wish you both the best, I said. Truly. But I won't be available in the ways you might expect. He didn't understand what that meant. Not yet. I ended the call and walked out onto the back porch. The roses were in bloom, Charles's favorite red variety, climbing up the lattice with quiet insistence. I inhaled the evening air and let it fill my chest. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing to live. That night, I began drafting a new will. I didn't know yet exactly where the money would go, but I knew who wouldn't control it. I was done explaining myself. I was done shrinking. This was my second act, and I was going to write it myself. 6 months later, I stood in the red clay dust of a hillside in Costa Rica, watching a newly built home receive its final coat of paint. The sun beat down on my shoulders, my arms ached pleasantly from hours of labor, and my heart felt fuller than it had in years. The children of the family we had built for were laughing as they ran circles around us. Their mother took my hands, tears shining in her eyes, and thanked me in Spanish. I didn't understand every word, but I understood everything she meant. That night, I sat in the volunteer lodge and posted a new blog entry. I had started the blog as a way to keep in touch with old friends. Somehow, it had grown into something more a space where other women, widows, and people in quiet crisis came to read and feel seen. In my latest post, I wrote this. 6 months ago, I was being gently herded toward an ending. A facility, a folding chair in a bingo room, a quiet place to wait for the last page, asterisk. But instead, I chose to start a new chapter. I chose to use what I had: time, health, resources, wisdom to build something, not just for myself, but for others. I wasn't trying to be brave. I was just refusing to be erased. Back in Illinois, Gregory had gone quiet after I'd sent him my final email loan that kindly but firmly drew the line. I told him I wasn't a financial safety net. I wasn't a fragile burden. I was his mother, yes, but a whole human being first. The last I heard, he and Stephanie were adjusting to parenthood. I wished them well, truly, but from a distance. Because here's the thing, freedom doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with silence. Sometimes it looks like your own name on a plane ticket to a place no one thought you'd go. And sometimes it sounds like the sound of your own voice saying yes to a life that's still waiting to be lived. If you're watching this and wondering whether it's too late to start over, let me be clear, it's not. It never is. And if this story moved you, share it. Someone out there might need to hear it today.